BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this, welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, bringing you all the news, views and analysis you need of our beautiful game. It's Tuesday the 18th of February and tonight Brendan Rodgers' Celtic side could write their name among the pantheon of greats if they pull off an incredible upset out in Germany.
We won't be the favourites for the tie, but everything is possible, and I think the goal that we scored brings a different view of the game totally. We know that over the two legs we'd have to play really well to come through.
Of course, Bayern Munich stand in their way, and Jamal Musiala knows all about stomping all over Scottish dreams.
After a while it became fun and got into a good rhythm, so hopefully it's like that tomorrow again.
But after last week's narrow loss, Celtic have certainly given them more than a glimmer of hope. And back on home shores, we welcomed a new face to the Scottish Premiership as Motherwell appointed Michael Wimmer as manager. We'll take a little look at that later on.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Well, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Scottish football journalist Hugh Macdonald. Hugh, it also says here German football expert. Where did your love of the German game really come from?
Well, it came basically from my son, who I took him to his first football game 36 years ago. It was, and believe it or not, it was Stirling Albion v Montrose. He's still undergoing some counselling from that years on, but we just tended to be people that tend to go to football games, and he'd been in about 10, 12 years ago, maybe a bit longer. He'd been in Dortmund, watched Dortmund play, and said, "Dad, we'll have to go over and see Dortmund." And as soon as we went to Dortmund and we went to the ground, we've really followed Dortmund basically all over. Well, not only Germany, we were at the Champions League final and that. So Dortmund's become a big part of my life, and then German football became a big part of my life because if you went to Dortmund, you would try and get a Bundesliga 2 game on the day that the Dortmund weren't playing. So you really get into the culture. And then we went to more and more. We didn't go to Dortmund. We went to Dortmund matches, but away matches in Bremen and Hamburg, whatever. So it's grown up over the last 15 years. One of the great joys of my life, even though they're absolutely rotten at the moment.
Well, we'll certainly be relying on that insight a little later on. We're also joined by Cillian Sheridan, former Celtic and Motherwell striker. Cillian, you've played at some great stadiums, Old Trafford, the Parc des Princes, Johan Cruyff Arena and the Camp Nou. How did they compare to Glebe Park on Saturday, that 2-2 draw?
Yeah, slightly different. Only the surface. That was the only difference. Getting used to it, enjoying it.
Fantastic. Well, from Brecon to Bayern, another huge game for Celtic. That's where we'll start. Brendan Rodgers said last week, before the game, that he just wanted to still be alive in the tie in Munich. He's certainly done that after the 2-1 loss at Celtic Park. Quite an incredible game, Cillian. What did you make of it?
It was kind of probably how the team finished the game. Probably gave a lot of people a bit more hope and positivity. I don't really think, the most optimistic Celtic fan, I don't think is expecting the team to get through the tie from the start. I thought, even if they nicked maybe a 1-0 win at home or something, it was still a big ask to then go and do something away. But I think just the fact that they were competitive and it kind of was able to put up a fight, probably more so in the second half. And they kind of stood up to Bayern as well, which was, I think it's good as well for Celtic and then Scottish football as well, that they're not going and being just completely steamrolled over. And I think it was kind of good for the league in general.
Absolutely. And Hugh, what did you make of the Bayern performance? Because it was impressive in parts, but then they sort of let Celtic back into it a little bit. They didn't really put their foot on the neck of Celtic. Were you surprised at that?
I was, because I thought that at one point the game was running away from Celtic. If you've got a front four, if you talk about world football, and they're playing this 4-2-3-1. If your front four at one point is Harry Kane and then Elise Musiala and they've got Coleman and Abry to come on. You just say to yourself, well, this could run, this could get a bit messy. I thought the substitutions, I thought at one point Company decided, right, we've got this in the bag, let's show this up. We've got a huge game on Saturday. Let's take some players off, because of course they had Leverkusen on Saturday, which was, if not a league decider, a very influential match on the season, and I thought they just came off it a wee bit. Interestingly, though, I've been listening to Brendan Rodgers a lot this season about what his priorities are, and of course, in press conferences, he's got to talk about various things. But one of the themes that's going through all the time is counter pressing. He's been talking about Celtic out of possession. He's been talking about how, even if he's playing, for example, Dundee United at the weekend, he talked a lot about, we're really good out of possession. We pressed really high, we pressed aggressively, and we pressed in numbers. And I thought Celtic in the last 25 minutes really did that at Celtic Park. I thought Maida through the centre was absolutely crucial to that, because suddenly the centre-backs didn't have an easy out ball to Neuer, and Neuer as well didn't have time to fashion the kind of passes he was doing. So I thought it got pretty hurly-burly in the last 20 minutes, which really suited Celtic.
Well, you mentioned Daizen Maeda there, Hugh. Obviously, he was rested initially in the 3-0 win over Dundee United on Saturday. A lot of important players still played the full 90. Callum McGregor, Cameron Carter-Vickers, Austin Trusty. And it was Jota and Adamida who kind of started in attack. Cillian, what did you make of that team? And do you think it makes it pretty straightforward, kind of what we should expect team-wise from Brendan Rodgers in Munich?
I still think he'll start with Adamida up front. And going away, I think it's the kind of, that profile of a striker is the striker Brendan Rodgers likes to play with. And I think going away games like this, I think that's who he'll go with. I think Maeda is a good option to change things up and kind of spring something different onto a team. It's probably something Bayern wouldn't have faced up until that point last week. But even in the game, I thought Adamida done all right. I thought he worked very, very hard first half. He's up there in his own a lot. I thought physically he kind of could match up to their centre halves, and he's got a bit of confidence now. You can see the difference. He's got some goals. He is the main guy now. I don't think, I'd be a little bit surprised now if Brendan Rodgers then changed that. I think he's got him built up again to being that guy now, where I think just go and stick with him and put him up front.
I suppose, though, would you expect to see him play the 90 minutes, or do you think, as you kind of touched upon, Brendan Rodgers will change it maybe with half an hour, 20 minutes to go, and put Daizen Maeda in that more central role?
Like we've seen how successful that works. Again, it does depend how the game's going. If Celtic are still in the game and they need to continue with how it's doing, or like I was saying, like when you put Daizen Maeda up through the middle, it's completely changes the dynamic of the attack out of the ball in that counter press that Hugh was talking about. So I think a lot of it will depend how the game's going, but it is something good to have up your sleeve, I think.
I think there's real reasons that the ideal start. And I think the two major reasons is, we always say, never listen to what a manager says, listen to look at what a manager does. And the last game of this calibre for Celtic was Atalanta, and he started Ida up front there, with the old cliche, he can get the team up the park, etc., etc. The other thing I think is the lack of match fitness of Jota. So he wouldn't want to go into the game with a front three. I don't think it would have to be Kuhn, Maeda, and then Jota. I don't think he would want to do that. So I think he'll go into the game with the front three of Kuhn, Ida, and Maeda at the moment, and then maybe towards the end he can bring on Jota for if the game is still means anything or is insignificant, but he can then bring Jota on to maybe get a different feel, and then shove Maeda one inside, But I agree with Cillian. I think Ida starts.
And Hugh, you touched upon it earlier, the Bayern game at the weekend, a 0-0 draw with Bayer Leverkusen. Maybe not quite a title decider just yet, but not far off.
Yeah.
A point was a decent result for them, but I think they were made to work very hard for it.
The point was a decent result for them before the game, but after 90 minutes, it was an absolute tremendous result for them because they weren't in the game at all in an attacking sense. It's another thing, going back to this counter-pressing of Brendan Rodgers. Brendan will have watched that game and he'll have seen just Alonso franking everything that he believes about a game. I mean, because Leverkusen out of possession were just harriers. It was 3 or 4, even when Kane was dropping off to get the ball in that sort of roll, that wee hole that he goes into, he was just swarmed with Leverkusen players. According to the stats, this was the lowest shots on target or even shots taken by Bayern Munich since the stats began. It certainly seemed that way in the game because I looked at the stats later and they said that Bayern had 2 shots. I looked at the game, I saw one shot that Kane was blocked inside the area, and I can't remember the other one. This was a real dominant, frenetic sort of pressing game by Leverkusen, who, by the way, should have won it. One of the great players in Germany who might find his way to Munich is Florian Wirtz, who we know from painful Scotland days, and he missed an absolute sitter at the end. So it was a tremendous result for Bayern, and it does keep that way when they're 8 points ahead with 12 games to go, and you say to yourself, well, they're really going to have to lose 3 games to lose the league, and I don't see that happening.
You mentioned Harry Kane there, Hugh. Cillian, how big is he? Because obviously all the chat yesterday was that it looked like he might be a doubt with a facial injury. Vincent Kompany in his press conference kind of played that down a little bit, as you would maybe expect. But how much of a blow would it be if they were to lose him?
I thought at the start you were going to compare me to Harry Kane there. But
I was just about to get to that, actually. But yeah.
I think he'll play. I think, like you said, Vincent Kompany played it down. The fact is just it was a facial injury. Maybe Hugh saw it in the game. I don't know. I didn't see what happened. But I think he plays. Again, the players they have, their attacking threat. Yes, Harry Kane's such a good player and important to them. Whatever player comes in for them is going to do not just as good of a job, but is still going to cause Celtic trouble. I don't think that's the game or Bayern's way of play rests on Harry Kane being fit or not. Plus, I think the way Harry Kane is, if there's any chance of him playing, he's going to play. He'll want goals, he wants records, he wants all those stats and everything. So I think he'll make himself play anyway.
Hugh, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so as well. He didn't seem in any great distress on Saturday walking off the park. There's nothing visible anyway. I just think my admiration for Kane just increases every time I see him. It sounds so mundane, even banal to say it. He's just such a good player. I watched him at Celtic Park, and everything he just picks up, it's always the right pass at the right speed, at the right angle. He's always moving in. And, the goal from the corner, just he's moving, that he moves in just enough for the defence to think he's joining in this mass run to the front post, and he just checks. But see the volley into the net. I mean, Cillian will know how. I mean, it was like a routine kind of finish. It was like, and you see, so I just look at that and I just go, just the timing, the technique, the pace on that, and that was just a terrific finish. And it kind of got lost because everybody's talking about the terrible marking, but it was just like an elite finish.
And I think a lot of what Harry Kane does as well gets lost in his goal scoring almost. I think my granddad used to say about Dennis Law, he's not that good, he only scores goals. Harry Kane, there's so much more to his game, and he will be so key for Bayern Munich tonight. Just looking at this, not just as a game, but kind of where it could stand in Celtic history if they were to do the incredible and leave with a win. where would it stand in their kind of great nights? It must be right up there, surely, Hugh.
For me, it would be absolute, because particularly the way the game has changed. I mean, I was brought up with Celtic going into the European Cup expecting to win it. And people say, what? Well, they won it once, they got to a final once. I think they got to a couple of semi-finals out in a penalty shootout. So when we were getting brought up as kids, we thought, well, Celtic are in this to win it, you know. Now, the way that the football geopolitics has changed over the years, we're now talking, and I think reasonably so, I don't make it let's make, remember the great one was European football after Christmas, and then it was European football at Champions League level in the knockout stages. So in many ways, I think, the KPI's been ticked this season. I think that, Celtic and Celtic supporters will look back and say, well, that was good. That was a good, that's been a good season. But the way that football has moved on now, I think this would be an absolutely seismic result. I mean, I just can't, I'll be quite frank with you, I just can't envisage it at all. I really can't. I can't see a way that Celtic won 2-0 in the Alliance. And like many people looking from the outside in this game, I think there'll be a core of Celtic supporters say, let's get back home with, with reputation intact. I don't think anybody reasonably expects anything from Celtic in terms of a result, I mean.
Cillian, would you agree with that? Because obviously, like Hugh's touched on, the memories of going to Dortmund and losing 7-1, they're not that old. So do Celtic, will that play on the players' mind a little?
I don't think so, because I think since then, you look at the Aston Villa game, they concede early, Bayern get up, same things could have happened and it didn't. So I think they've learned very quickly from the Dortmund game, which is a testament to the team this season, that they can rally together and kind of stand up to teams now. I think, like, touching on what you were saying there, I saw it just earlier on today, I think the Bundesliga the last 10 years is it 6 billion in transfers it's made. The Scottish League was it 400 million or something like that. Like, you can't compete with that. At the end of the day, that's what it's always going to come down to. So I think the fact this season Celtic have been, obviously bar the Dortmund game, have been competitive against teams from these leagues speaks volumes of probably how far they've come, and probably that was the thing Brendan Rodgers wanted to improve on.
Well, potentially historic night awaits in Munich for Celtic. We'll have to see how they get on. Now we're going to move our attentions to Motherwell, who have appointed former Austria Vienna manager Michael Wimmer following Stuart Kettlewell's exit back in January. It's taken Motherwell quite a while to choose their man. Why do you think that was, Hugh, and what do we really know about him?
I think they wanted to do, well, first of all, they would have been surprised at the resignation of Kettlewell, so it's not as if they've had, all clubs will have the envelope in the top drawer, because everybody knows that the manager's going to leave at one point, whether you sack him or whether he just gets a better job. But I think they were maybe caught in the back foot. I think they would have decided that they really need to be exhaustive. I can be brought up in an era of Scottish football when it was a merry-go-round of managers, and you just got the usual suspects up in some kind of identity parade and picked one. So Scottish football's moved dramatically away from that, particularly the Premiership, where there's so many foreign coaches in the league now. So that would be another reason. I did make a phone call to a couple of my contacts in Germany today about him, and they were quite interested about him, said he's very much coach, very much grassroots, young guy. I mean, his CV shows that with Nuremberg. The interesting one is Stuttgart. He worked here, and they've got a tremendous reputation for trying to bring through, kids, trying to attack the sort of hegemony of German football through other means. If Motherwell are going to be anything as a force, they've got to bring through their own players. They have been very successful at that. And reputationally, Cillian will know this, being in Scottish football, the Motherwell Academy gets a very good name. So I think that would have been attractive to Wimmer, because he would do his due diligence as well. The other thing that Wimmer comes about is that somebody said to me today, he's like a diet Klopp, you know. He has a wee look of Klopp off him, actually, but in that very much that gegenpressing, that full of energy game, taking the game to the opposition in that, you know, aggressive press, wanting to be exciting, not a tiki-taka man, being a sort of real aggressive go forward. So interesting times.
And Cillian, the departure of Stuart Kettlewell does seem to have affected the Motherwell players quite badly. They've lost their last 2 games, lost their last 4, but the last 2 since Stuart Kettlewell left. And the performance against Ross County was really, really poor. How big a job does Michael Wimmer have on his hands kind of implementing this new style? Because they were quite a passive team at times under Stuart Kettlewell, and also just kind of lifting the confidence and lifting the morale in the dressing room as well.
Yeah, I think his first job or his first task that he'll try to do will be lift morale and probably try and instill a bit of belief back into them. I'm sure, like Hugh was saying, he'll have done his due diligence. He'll have seen how the team can perform. He'll know all the players. He'll have figured out their strengths and weaknesses. And it'll just be a case of him trying to come in and implement the way he wants his team to play. He'll probably be doing I would imagine there'll be a lot of coaching in terms of shape, structure. Probably there'll be different coaching ideas and philosophies and ways of training. So it might be on the players, how they react to that and how they take that on board. So I think it's exciting. It's something. It's a different name. It's someone from abroad coming in, fresh ideas, different outlook on stuff. So it's interested to see how it goes.
It certainly will be interesting. Right, that's all we've got time for today. Many thanks to Hugh Macdonald and Cillian Sheridan for joining us. Remember, we're here with new episodes bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out by subscribing on BBC Sounds with push notifications turned on to alert you to every new show. We'll end with a little German idiom, and Hugh can tell me if my accent's any good. Alles hat ein Ende, nur die Wurst hat zwei. Everything has an end, but only a sausage has 2. One to think around, certainly. Goodbye.
On BBC Sounds. From life aboard a Russian submarine to chairman of Hearts Football Club.
At this stage, he was the hero.
But as his controversial decisions escalated,
they said, we're going to sack George. And I'm going, you can't do this.
How did Vladimir Romanov go from Hearts saviour to a wanted man?
It caused a whole load of chaos and havoc.
Romanov, Tsar of Hearts. Listen now on BBC Sounds.